Hi, everybody. It's Karen from Divorce Workshop. We're back again with another Divorce Workshop talk series. Today, we're inviting Chloe O back on to talk about long distance co Know that Just Separated, our new workbook, is out and available Amazon worldwide. Hello.
Hello, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, I started looking into this topic,
Yeah.
and it's big, actually. It's bigger than I thought. I want to start by saying, like, a lot of people remarry and they
Yeah.
repartner up after a divorce, right?
Yeah.
Because, a lot of us want to find love again, or,
Life doesn't
but
end.
life doesn't end, right? And so I think in my own situation, right, it was difficult, but we did it right way,
Yeah.
where we did it slowly, but we were in the same community. We were,
Yeah.
so that's why we're here to talk to you today, because there's challenges that are hard even with being in close proximity.
Yeah.
But assuming, just because we've talked about this before with all this international stuff, it gets more complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in general, introducing new romantic partners, to the children, to each other after
Mm-hmm.
divorce, it's a challenging topic, and it's usually very emotionally charged, and you have the new partner inputting into the conversation as well. So, it's something that in general I recommend people include in their parenting plan if they have a reasonable relationship, just agreeing when they're not in the eye of the storm yet,
Mm-hmm.
before they get full of emotions, etc., agreeing how they will introduce somebody, whether the other parent will get to meet them before the children do, how long will they have to be in the relationship before that begins, how long until the kids can stay overnight with that person, those kind of things. But the problem that we see with international couples,
Mm-hmm.
and when the parents aren't living next to each other, you don't always have that luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Just the other day, I was talking to somebody who was building a plan that's actually half of it in Canada, half of it in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And they were having this kind of conversation around how they were going to introduce new partners. And she said, "Well, it has to be the relationship has to have existed for about 3 months. That seemed reasonable to her." And then I said, well, if you look at your parenting schedule, actually 3 months means the children will have seen that person once.
Uh, yeah.
So it really, it
Mm-hmm.
seems like a fair amount of time, but it really isn't in practice. And so what we want to do is to respect the children's rhythm, and try as much as possible to emulate that pace that you would ideally allow them to have if you were next to each other.
Yeah,
And
because
it gets really tricky.
yeah, it gets tricky because I'm thinking, depending who you are, where you are in your divorce process or wherever, or your healing journeys, some can jump right in quite fast,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
they want to find love, and maybe they were lonely in that marriage before. Everybody's so unique, right?
yeah,
But the children are not in that same position, right?
yeah.
So you have to kind of be mindful of that.
And be mindful that the timeline isn't the same for the person who's having that romantic relationship than it is for the children,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're the parent who's not with the children most of the time. So you may have met somebody 6 months ago and it's going really well, and then you decide to move in, and to you, that's a reasonable
Mm-hmm.
amount of time, and it's all happening at a rhythm that makes sense to you. But from your children's perspective, who only see you every so often, actually it isn't a long amount of time,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't give them that time. And so it may be that you have decided to move in with the new person because you have been together for, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, let's say a year, and you think that's good timing and you're ready to proceed. But actually, your children have only had contact with this person a couple of times at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to stay with you and having this person they don't really know in the house can be really disturbing to them. So it's very tricky to introduce that person gradually. But thankfully, with all the technology that we have
Yeah.
in our days, we can really, you can integrate them in different ways. It won't be as nice as having dinner together
Mm-hmm.
or going bowling or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
but you can have them just say hi on calls. You can start introducing that person in the conversation more, so mentioning their name and things they like and things you did with them, just so that the children can understand that they're part of your daily life and can start to prepare for that. And then it might be that you have to make kind of slightly different arrangements at the beginning when the children come to visit you. And even if that person is living with you, well, maybe they just don't stay at the house for that period of time and just visit. And so you try and copy the rhythm that you would have had if you were next to each other. But it takes a lot of management.
Yeah, management and patience, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, I was thinking like, in my situation, we were able to do it very slowly, right?
Yeah.
And that made it much easier. Even there was adjustments there, but it made it much easier. And you can't do, you know, the little short visits, you know, like you said, but patience is really needed, I think, with this long distance co-parenting, introducing new relationships and flexibility, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, like everything with parenting, you know, it's flexibility. It's about understanding who your children are. You know, they're all going to react differently to the divorce to start with. They're all going to have different feelings around you being far away. You know, some children really harbor the hope that their parents are going to get back together. So they react very strongly when someone else is introduced. And it's not about that new person. It's just about the fact that they have that hope. So, you know, only you know your children and know how they're feeling, how they typically react, how adaptable they are, you know, also based on their age. It's just, you know, based on whether their other parent has introduced someone else, you know, into the picture as well. So it's, you know, there's not a one size fits all, but it's really understanding that your pace is probably different to your children's pace.
Yeah, that's what we started talking about, right? Like it is a different, do you notice like cultural differences, right? So, you know, like
inevitably.
Like even in Canada and US, we seem very similar, but we do have differences. My assumption is probably in Europe it's even more so because languages are different. So if you introduce a new partner and it's different culture, or it's your own but your co-partner's not, like, does that cause any problems, like, or any concerns or anything?
Well, it does, because you know, basically the dynamic in the house when your children come to visit you changes. You know, and so if you're suddenly with somebody who's very religious or who speaks a different language or, you know, whatever it is, the children are going to feel like, well, I don't recognize this environment anymore, and they're not in it often enough for it to be familiar. So you want to keep it as stable as possible, but having that new influence inevitably changes the dynamic in the household. So it is difficult. And then there's different cultures also that introduce new people faster. There's cultures where people, you know, especially men, don't stay single very long. And so there is that immediate search for the new wife who is going to often play a very traditional role. And so from the man's perspective, who's meeting this person, to him that's a regular pace, but the child, you know, doesn't have the luxury of that time that they've got.
Yeah, that's my own story with my parents. My dad remarried quite fast, and too fast, right? I was a little kid, and it just, and think about it, back then, I mean, that's why you and I are doing what we do now. We want more awareness and help for people. But back in the 70s, they didn't know better. They just kind of got through whatever they like, they didn't know, and I can't really blame them and hold that. It's just that, you know, nowadays we know better. And so I just think that it's important that we look at stuff like this anyway. So is there anything else that comes up that people need to know?
I think it's just about trying to collaborate. I'd say, you know, of course, every divorce is different. There's somewhere you can't speak to each other afterwards, or there was abuse or situations like that. But in the majority of divorces where you might not be best of friends, but you can still have a chat. You know, the one obvious shared interest that the parents have is their children's well-being, and being able to work together to think through the best approach, to make sure that both parents are supportive of this new relationship and are sharing a positive message about the relationship with the children, are helping them through that transition and encouraging it as a positive. All of that, you know, the more you can have that alignment between the two parents, the better the experience is going to be for the children. So, you know, as always, trying to collaborate as co-parents is going to make a massive difference. But,
so
you know,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from my own experience as well, you know, after my divorce, I met somebody, and when you're in love and you meet somebody that you think is brilliant, and you want to, you know, there's someone that's very important to you, and your children are, of course, the people who are the most important to you. You want to bring the two together, and it's really tempting. You want them to know each other, and you want your kids to love the person you're loving, and vice versa. And I think that one of the challenges that I see, even when everybody has the best of intentions, is that there's always a tendency to rush things and really thinking of the big picture. And that if you take 6 more months, it's not going to change much. If that person is really the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, what difference is it going to make if you take 6 more months to introduce them?
I'd like you to come back on. I think we should talk about that.
Yeah, it's a sticky topic.
No, because we've both been through it.
Yeah.
With our own, like, divorcing and then also as a kid. So I just think we could talk about that, because I think
it comes up a lot.
It comes up a lot
as well.
Yeah. So I think
and for the parent who isn't being consulted or involved, it's very difficult to live through, because it really feels like there's a sense of betrayal when the children get introduced to somebody new without the other parent being aware of it. And the problem is that it impacts the children, because if a parent's taken by surprise, they're rarely going to have a positive reaction. And so it gives the kids this sense of being stuck in the middle and of having said something they shouldn't say, or that they're somehow, aligning with one parent rather than the other. And you always want to try and avoid that. You want the parents to seem united to the children so they don't feel torn between the two.
Yeah, it's a big topic. But I think I'd like to do one, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah,
we should do that. So I thought about this too, is as you had mentioned before, that you could do virtual. Does that come up a lot? Like phone calls, yes, but could you do like phone, like set up a Zoom or a Google Meet or something? Is that kind of appropriate way to start?
The answer is going to be about the age of the child. You've got a 3-year-old, you're not going to do a Zoom call with somebody they've never met. If you've got slightly older children, they might be comfortable, or maybe you've got a kid who loves playing Fortnite or Roblox or God knows what, and you can have the other person play with them. It depends so much on your child, and that's why it really is about customizing the approach to your family, to your children, to make sure that the plan works for them. But yeah, I mean, the distance doesn't mean there's no contact. So you can introduce them, and as long as both parents are presenting it as a healthy development in their lives, and the children see that person as just another person to love them, then it can be a really positive experience.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when you think about the bigger picture and what really kids need, and I think a psychologist would agree with me here, is the more love they can have, the better, right?
Exactly.
And if we can relook at it that way, then we can it's hard at the beginning of a divorce to think that way.
Yeah. And you feel threatened in your role as a parent.
Yes.
You feel replaced, especially if you're far away.
Yeah.
So, we talked a lot about the scenario where it's the parent who's far away who is introducing someone new. But even if you're the person there with the children most of the time, you're kind of their entire world. You're with them the vast majority of their time. They don't have easy access to their other parent. And so actually bringing someone else into the picture also is very destabilizing for them, because it's their whole world that's taken over. So for both parents, it's really important to pace it, but it is trickier to take that time when you're far away.
Yeah. And remember, it's even role loss and identity loss is a real grief.
It is.
And for it's pretty. I think it's been researched that for men who leave the house, they really feel like they're going to lose contact with their children. And so think about it. What your specialty is when it's international. I suspect that's even compounded, right? It's even more, because dad lives in Mexico and mom lives in Canada. Mom has the kids for school. Dad's feeling, and dad may meet somebody. I mean, a lot of communication is definitely needed. With the co-parenting.
No, it gets very tricky. I think it's really, that's why it's important to communicate among the parents and to really do it in a way that is considered, with the best interest of the children at heart. You're never going to get it perfect. Anyway, as parents, we never get anything perfect, but we try our best. And the idea is that we have to really think about it, not rush into it, and make sure that we're doing it at a pace that allows us to even slow down if need be. And that gives us that flexibility to adapt to the response basically that you're getting from the kids.
I'm wondering also, I had the question that came up in my head, is that if it would be best that the one co-parent that's starting to, in a very serious relationship, talks to the other co-parent before they even talk about, when the kids come over or they come see me, I'm going to, is it, so then they can start talking about it. That'd
I mean,
probably
that's
be,
always the ideal scenario, isn't it? We
yeah,
want the parents to parent together,
yeah.
and that requires aligning ahead of time. I said about documenting it in your parenting plan, but whether it's on paper or not, there is a
Mm-hmm.
commitment that needs to happen from the parents, even just out of respect for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
To just let them know what's happening, and if it's going to impact the children,
Mm-hmm.
it's fair enough to let them know.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows especially both parents to do it in a way that's coordinated, and that where the messaging is coordinated, and the way they're going to handle it is something that they both feel comfortable with. If your objective is to keep your children as happy as possible, then working together is the best way to do it. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not always easy, and sometimes it's not very doable given the relationship.
Yeah, so I guess it's just like anything. It's just a harder transition in a way, like it just adds more layers. And I think the most important thing is that communication and keeping that co-parenting, first of all, more like a business of co-parenting, we call it, right?
Yeah.
It is like a business of co-parenting. You now are team
Yeah.
co-parent. So it's even more important when this big distance is involved, because
Yeah.
if they have if if your co-parent is supportive of you and your new partnership or vice versa, then I suspect it can all be easier
But it,
to
yeah, it's very interesting the bit you were saying about people's sense of being replaced,
yeah.
and there's very different person. And I actually had a conversation with my ex just a few weeks ago about that, where he felt very much replaced as a father
Mm-hmm.
by my new partner. And actually, for me, his new partner, I wanted her to be more involved with
Mm-hmm.
the girls. And I want her to be a co-parent
Mm-hmm.
figure. If she's going to be spending time with her, I actually want her to step up into that role. And he thought he was being very respectful by keeping her a bit in the background, and not involving her, and not
Mm-hmm.
creating that contact. So it was just a guess of expectation. See it truly as an enrichment for the children to have yet another parent figure. We all have, outside of our parents, we'll have a coach,
Mm-hmm.
a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
an aunt, an uncle, a
Mentor.
grandparent,
Mm-hmm.
who's somebody who's important to us and who plays that kind of role. And that's a huge richness. If they're romantically involved with your parent, it's almost irrelevant. There's still a
Mm-hmm.
new person in the children's lives, a new influence, a new way of looking at things, and somebody who's there to love them. So
Yeah, and
there's really nothing to fight.
that's what I said before. It's all about the love component, right?
Yeah.
However, the thing is with divorce, as we know, except the very few that are very amicable, is there's a lot of emotion
Yeah.
there. So I guess I also want to say, like, allow the emotions. We know it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy
Yeah.
thing, right?
It's not easy.
So
And that new
transitioning can
person,
take time.
the
Sorry.
new person is not always well intended either. I'm
Yeah.
talking of a scenario where that person is there to love the children and to be there for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But sometimes they want nothing to do with the children, or
Yeah.
they're just not very nice to them or whatnot. So that's why it really is about each family and making sure that you're doing it the right way for your kids.
Yeah. It's a tough thing, right? Like, it's not an easy thing, but
Well, co-parenting is tough in general,
right.
especially after divorce. When you're married, it's hard enough, but when you're not necessarily the best of friends, it gets even harder.
Yeah, because we haven't even talked about, like, the parenting styles can be quite
Yeah.
different, and that even causes more.
Yeah.
And when you're divorcing, those parenting styles can get even more stronger, right? So
They tend to. People
yeah,
revert back to their nature. They're less accommodating of the other person's
yeah,
parenting
yeah,
style.
yeah,
And then the third person you're introducing, the new relationship, also has their own parenting style. They may be parents themselves, and so that adds again. So I think it's really for the parents to see it as a co-parenting team. So
right.
there's of course the immediate parents, the natural, the parents who raised that child, but then the co-parents, the new partners are also part of that
Mhm.
relationship. They're spending time with the children. They're part of their environment. They might be called stepmom or stepdad. So it really is about working together as a team and respecting each other, as much as you can.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back on and let's talk about that topic we talked about
Yeah,
before, as I
sounds
think that'd be a
great.
good one for us. And before we go, if anyone have any questions, just put in the comment section. Do you have anything that you want to talk about? What's coming up?
Yes, I've got an exciting project. I know that you just released your book, and I've got mine coming up as well soon. I'm releasing it in January,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be it's called "Don't Screw Up Your Divorce," and it's about helping people to prepare to make sure that they set the right foundations at the very beginning when you've made that
Mm-hmm.
decision, but you don't know where to start, to help you to really start things off in the best possible way to avoid things going off the rails later on. So the way you start, the way you tell your spouse, the way
Yep.
you set yourself up, the people you choose to surround yourself with, all of that is going to have a direct influence on how the divorce
Yep.
goes. So I'm very excited about releasing the book, and of course I'll be sharing a lot on social media as it gets closer to
Yeah.
completion.
It's a big job,
Yes.
and congratulations.
Thank
I know
you.
we've talked about it before.
Yeah,
People talk about doing it, but not everybody does follow through with it because it is a lot of
that's
work.
true.
So
It is a lot of work, but if it can help even just one person,
exactly,
it'll have been worth it.
exactly. So great news.
That's
So thank
good.
you, everybody, and we'll book that time for the next
Sounds
talk.
perfect.
All right, take
Thank you so
care.
much,
Thank
Karen.
you.
Take care.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.